Hi.
Alice, where the hell were you?
I went for a run.
You've been gone for over 2 hours. I was worried about you.
Well, then I went to Pinkberry.
You went to Pinkberry?
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that because you completely blew our dinner plans. Susan Kirby and her husband?
I'm sorry, I forgot. I have Alzheimer's.
Oh, Mike dropped, Alice. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Psych Podcast, the podcast where psychology meets film. I am your host, Dr. Alex Swan, and today's film is going to go down a little bit of a solemn route. We are talking today about the Alzheimer's heavy film, Still Alice. It came out in 2014, and stars Julianne Moore as Alice, and it also includes Kate Bosworth, Alec Baldwin, Seth Gilliam, Kristen Stewart, all in a tight little family dealing with some very early onset Alzheimer's. It was directed and written and directed by Richard Glatzer and Wash Westmoreland, and they really portray a woman struggling with her conceptual self-identity, and because her cognition is decaying at a very rapid rate. And I think they did a pretty good job. Julianne Moore does a phenomenal job as the main character, as someone who is losing their memory. Wonderful. She won the Academy Award for it the following year, and this one hits quite a bit close to home, in that Julianne Moore plays a linguistics professor, and myself and my guest are also cognitive scientists, and it's an odd one to watch. So without further ado, let's jump in with my guest host. My guest host today is Dr. Shana Southard-Dobbs. Shana is an assistant professor of psychology at Lander University in Greenwood, South Carolina, where she teaches intro psych, statistics, and courses on cognitive psychology and memory, my faves. Shana also mentors a team of undergraduate research assistants in her stress and cognition lab at Lander. Ooh. As a researcher, Shana studies how people think about and remember stressful life events and how those cognitive processes influence well-being. And I think that has a lot to do with what film we're talking about today. Shana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. I'm so excited to join you and this very cool club of teaching of psychology people who have been on the show with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to have you on. We've been talking about this for a while. Mm-hmm. And as you know, from listening to other episodes and hearing me chat about it recently at the Southeastern Teaching of Psych Conference, before we jump into talking about Still Alice, I want to ask your thoughts about film, teaching with film, and all of that sort of thing. So what do you love about film?
Well, film is a really interesting, medium to explore the human experience, right? And I like to think when I am watching a film, my favorite like, type of film to watch is one that has me thinking. It's got like a puzzle
Hmm.
in it. Um, it's got me thinking about the characters, what's going on with them. Yeah, that's me as an audience member.
Right. So as a teacher,
Hmm.
how do you use film in your courses?
So I wish I had a more exciting thing to say about my use of film in my teaching. I'm a pretty like a basic user case situation when it comes to using film in teaching. A clip here and there to illustrate a concept or, hey, students, analyze this. What's going on? What do you see playing out in this scene?
Scenes. Yeah.
Identify concepts,
Right.
But I do kind of like to dream about things I would want to do one day in my teaching.
Hmm.
And I love the idea of teaching a whole class through the medium of film.
Yeah.
I got to do that as a student, as an undergrad, my small liberal arts college, Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas. So I took a history class
Uh-huh.
that was history and film. And the professor kind of had a different theme every, time he taught the class. And so we watched a whole bunch of Oliver Stone films, JFK,
Nice.
Nixon, Salvador. And that was a really transformative experience for me. I got to learn things that had been just like a blank spot in my education before that
Yeah.
about American history there. And I love the idea of teaching a psychology class just through the medium of film and analysis. That's super liberal artsy.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Right.
And having taught a psych of film course, it is some of the best fun that you'll ever have. So if you do have the opportunity to, I don't know, teach a summer course or add a course to your already full repertoire there that I mentioned earlier, I definitely recommend making sure that one gets out on the books, because I bet you will have people clamoring to take it, especially with the background of that history and film class that you had. It's something that'll definitely fuel the way that you would teach a psych and film class. So yeah, that's really awesome. And of course, in my CTOP talk, I say that you should jump in head first into the deep end. I know you said you use clips, but you just dive right in.
Get in there.
Yeah. I'll call it a swan dive right in. Yeah,
Oh,
that
my
one's free.
gosh.
That one's free.
Oh boy.
Okay,
stuff.
so that is really cool. And I love hearing that perspective of having taken a completely different film class. So let's pivot now to Still Alice. What was your reasoning behind choosing that film for our discussion today?
So, in our preparations for this episode, we rattled around a few films that, had some content that matched my expertise.
Yeah.
And I was a little nervous to choose Still Alice because I'm not an expert on Alzheimer's disease.
And neither am I. I think that's important
Mhm.
for us to put out there, is neither of us are Alzheimer's researchers or Alzheimer's disease experts or anything like that. And while we're both cognitive psychologists that can speak a little bit more about it than maybe somebody else within the psychological field, we don't want to misrepresent. We're going to try our best not to misrepresent it.
That's right. Yes, thank you for that disclaimer,
Yeah.
Alex. But my area of expertise, broadly speaking, is autobiographical memory.
Uh-huh.
And so I was just kind of crossing my fingers, honestly, that there would be like kind of a lot to talk about in the realm of autobiographical memory in this film. And there is.
Yeah.
I think we have
Yeah.
some good things to talk about there. But we also rattled around, maybe looking at Spellbound from Hitchcock. And I enjoy Hitchcock's films and the scores and just the whole experience of a Hitchcock film. And I thought that would be kind of fun. But honestly, the Freudy, psychoanalytic, I just couldn't.
Yeah, it's
couldn't.
being an older film. I think we'd have that hill to cross, and that would be it's more of a mountain at that point. Yeah. So I totally get it. And the interesting thing, before we jump into our discussion, that I wanted to add was that I don't remember if I actually did this when we were talking about what film to talk about that had like an autobiographical memory bent to it, but I did either look then or I looked later at Indiana University's psych and film database. So it's more like cognitive science film database.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Oh no, it's great. It's a great one, and it's cognitive science, so it has all the stuff that you would talk about in cognitive science, and there's like dozens of films, if not close to 100 or so. It's a really cool database. But in any case, Still Alice is on there, and one of the categories is autobiographical memory. So not just memory in general, but autobiographical memory is on there. So if you just search for that, so if you head to that website, you search for the tag autobiographical memory, it'll come up with all of the films that are tagged with AB memory.
Well, that is amazing and super validating. So thank you for sharing that.
And Still Alice does have that tag. Obviously, the main tag is like memory deficit, I think is the tag to, catch dementia and Alzheimer's and all of those kinds of and amnesia and all that. But the autobiographical tag is on Still Alice. So I was confident with this pick, even though neither of us are Alzheimer's researchers or experts or anything like that. So I was pretty confident. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So speaking of autobiographical memory, I think that's an important point to start. But before we do that, before we jump into I would imagine a wealth of knowledge there. We do need to obviously point out that this film is about a, we'll say, middle-aged woman who has a rare disease that brings about a rare genetic disease that brings about early onset Alzheimer's disease. So early onset Alzheimer's, I think, it isn't as young as what she is in the film. I think she turns 50 at the beginning of the movie.
That's right.
So something like that. And so that's fairly early for even just an early onset diagnosis.
What's it like? Like, what does it actually feel like?
Well, it's not always the same. I have good days, bad days, and on my good days, I can, almost pass for a normal person. But on my bad days, I feel like I can't find myself. I've always been so defined by my intellect, my language, my articulation, and now sometimes I can see the words hanging in front of me and I can't reach them, and I don't know who I am, and I don't know what I'm going to lose next.
So to make to get our viewers up to speed on what Alzheimer's disease is a form of memory impairment in general, but it also has biological aspects to it, as most memory deficit disorders have as well. And this is a particularly terrible disease because it not only affects people in the places where they have memory stored in their cortex, but it's pretty much an entire brain disintegration. Essentially, the brain atrophies and starts to pocket. And one of the current ideas that surround the biological underpinnings of the disorder itself is that there are some proteins that cause the axons in a person's brain to start to basically kind of expand and unravel and sort of fall apart. I'm motioning to Shana, but I know you all can't see.
Looks real good.
Yeah. So they sort of just like start to expand and rip apart. And once they do, they essentially are no longer functioning. You can't send a signal through a ruptured axon. And so that cell gets cleaned out. It gets culled. And so you end up with a very small brain, pockets, atrophied bits. And with those cell deaths comes essentially the loss of self. It's more than just a memory disorder, I want to say. It's a loss of a self disorder. It's and I saw a comment when I was grabbing some clips for this for our discussion. I saw a comment where somebody compared Alzheimer's disease to cancer. So cancer's pretty rough. I think we can all agree that cancer's pretty rough, no matter what kind of cancer you have. Regardless if it's a small bit of melanoma that you can get excised off your skin, or if it's like stage 4 pancreatic cancer and things look grim. Like, those are pretty rough things to deal with. But you don't lose yourself. You don't lose your memory. You don't lose yourself. And all of the things that come with being yourself. Alzheimer's takes that thing away from you, including and not limited to some of the other things that cancer does take away from you as well, right? Your overall health, your overall well-being, your overall ability to communicate. And we see that throughout the course of the film. So with Alzheimer's, we lose so much more than some of the other terrible diseases that humans have to deal with. So with that, I also want to say that apologies to our listeners that this is not going to be a very fun one, as is typical on this show. This is not going to be a lighthearted discussion. There are some lighthearted moments in the movie, but Alzheimer's is pretty sucky, right, Shana?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So with that in mind, because your research is in autobiographical memory, and that is what Alzheimer's takes away, what aspects of AB memory are represented in the film? What's your take on that?
Well, so it's interesting the way you framed that, because one of the biggest things that stood out for me is actually the preservation of some of Alice's memories.
Okay.
Which I think if you sort of, I was talking with my students in my memory class just this afternoon about this. I think if you sort of stopped people on the sidewalk and asked them what they know about Alzheimer's disease, or, what does it look like? I think probably your average person would describe a situation where, this person is sort of not connected with their current reality. They're having trouble remembering things in the moment, but they can remember details, people and places from a long time ago.
Okay.
From a much earlier period in their life. And we see that in Still Alice. Specifically, I was really intrigued by these sort of flashes of Actually, I want to get your take on this, Alex, because I'm not 100% sure if the images we're seeing are Alice and her mother when she's a child, when Alice is a child, or it's possible it could be Alice's mother and Alice's sister.
Yeah,
we could break that down if we want to.
I think it might be Alice and her sister because she references her sister quite a bit.
Or Alice and her sister.
Yeah, Alice and her sister, and her mother died in a car accident. So
that's right.
I think what she's trying to do is hold on to some of those memories. Yeah.
So I mean, what I noticed, this represented in the film is that as we see Alice degrading, her cognitive performance is declining quite rapidly. Which is a function of the progression of her particular manifestation of the disease.
Right.
But also you have this really good discussion in the neurologist's office wherein he's explaining now people who are quite highly educated often do see rapid decline,
right,
because they have been able to compensate with strategy. And that is true. That's my understanding. That's the clinical presentation a lot of times for highly educated individuals. But throughout the film, even though we see Alice declining quite rapidly, these memories are preserved and these images don't change very much.
Okay.
Is that the way you remember it in the film, Alex?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I suppose I can find some counterexamples, at least from my perspective. So the one thing that my wife and I thought about was when she was looking at a photo album, and we didn't realize that it was a family home on the beach, and so it seemed as though her husband, played by Alec Baldwin, was concerned that she was looking at this photo album thinking these people were her and her sister and her mother and stuff, but could potentially not be. I don't know if that's necessarily a great example, but after her youngest daughter's play, they go backstage, and Alice doesn't seem to recognize her, but plays it off as though she was just being kind of like a giddy fan or something like that. But there is a lot of power behind the unstated stuff about her not recognizing her daughter. And from my understanding of Alzheimer's is that when the disease progresses that far, recognizing people is extremely difficult. And whether or not recognition is in the same vein as what you're describing, I would say that's debatable. If I'm understanding your take.
I think we might be talking about different things.
That's fair.
Actually. So that reminds me of another scene, and honestly, I can't remember when this occurs in the film, but the older daughter, Anna, who, if I understood correctly, Alice has named her oldest child, Anna, after her sister,
right,
Anne. And there is a point at which Alice refers to her older daughter, Anna, as
Anne. Yeah.
And Anna, she doesn't handle that super well, No, she needs to correct.
Yeah, Kate Bosworth bothered me in this movie. I will say that none of the characters were very likable in the first 20 minutes or so. It almost took me out of the entire situation of feeling sympathy or empathy for any of these people, because they were so unlikable. Like Alec Baldwin's character, like, oh man, he could go jump off a cliff for all I care. I can only imagine how hard it must be. But even before she's diagnosed, and even before he knows anything, he is not a likable dude. So that's just my take. And Kate Bosworth's character, Anna, also not very likable.
No, not really.
I'm
needs
glad
to
I'm
be
not.
in
I'm glad I'm
control.
not the only one.
No, I didn't love her. But I'm the oldest child in my family. So I
That's
kinda
fair.
understand.
Yeah, I'm the middle one, so like,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's funny because I have an older sister and a younger sister, so the three siblings
Yeah.
there matched my
Right.
livelihood.
So, but I think we'll probably come around to this again. But so I think when I said earlier, I think we might be talking about different things. So I'm talking about the preservation of memories from much earlier in Alice's life.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean,
Right.
I guess there's just a full range of what
Mhm.
constitutes autobiographical memory. That's fair.
So, I mean, but that's the thing. So in Alzheimer's disease, it's like my understanding, again, I'm not an expert on the disease, but my understanding is that this very frustrating pattern of preservation of some memories from from a lot earlier in life, which does not match the person's sort of current reality.
Okay.
They may
Yeah,
be
gotcha.
looking at their adult daughter and calling them by the name of their sibling.
I see what you're
right?
saying. Yeah.
Because the memory of that person from much longer ago is more intact. It's more well preserved.
And it becomes
And
more salient because of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So there's a time difference here as far
Mhm.
as when the memory was encoded and what gets atrophied first. What it
Mhm.
seems like. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Because so that, as that shows up in the disease, is actually reflective of a much broader pattern of autobiographical memory in just kind of the normal population. And that is that memories of experiences, people, places, things you enjoy. There's even research on like your memory of songs
Mhm.
from different periods of time and periods of your life. These memories from the period of adolescence through like early adulthood hold this sort of privileged status
Okay.
in memory. And most people, it's probably the most well documented phenomenon in the realm of autobiographical memory, that memories from this period of life are very well preserved. They're easily retrieved. And actually, the research has shifted a little bit in the very recent years.
Mhm.
So it looks like it depends on how you cue the memory. So you get, so it's called the reminiscence bump,
Right,
because
yeah.
if you draw a graph,
Yeah.
right, you get a
Whoop.
bump in the graph.
Mhm.
Whoop. And that bump is actually earlier. It's younger if you have odor cues. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. What? I know. That's some quite recent discussion.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
But,
And there's some
they're all kind
other more. There are longer lasting ones. So the ones that I typically teach are the life script and cognitive hypotheses.
Right. So there are multiple explanations for why does this occur, and I think they're all compelling explanations.
Yeah.
And there's currently some attempt to sort of synthesize them into like a monster explanation.
Okay.
That has features of all of them sort of simultaneously.
I can see that. Because when I teach, I see the overlap, but an emphasis on one thing versus the other thing. Hypothesis to hypothesis, theory to theory. So yeah, I can see that. It's interesting though, and correct me if I'm wrong. That when you ask somebody who is late middle-aged adult, so late middle adulthood to early elderly ages, like so we'll say 55 to 70 years old, the reminiscence bump typically tends to be around 20 years old, somewhere around there. Is that
maybe even a little bit younger?
maybe a little
but
bit younger?
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, ish.
And so it's intriguing to me that they set Alice and this is probably intentional from the filmmaker's perspective, at 50, right? Because that is where if she was neurotypical, where would her reminiscence bump be?
My understanding of the reminiscence bump is not that it shifts as a function of how old you are at the time of retrieval.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, but there is some evidence that the way you cue retrieval may shift the bump a little bit, the age at which you have this peak of retrieval.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
And I may just be misunderstanding my own notes on that. I probably don't teach it like that. So, yeah.
So one of the hypotheses that's been proposed about why is there a reminiscence bump. So this is from like the David Rubin camp.
Okay.
And David Rubin is, I tell my students he's like my academic granddad, kind of. Right? You know, you do your academic family tree.
Yeah.
My doctoral advisor did his postdoc studies with David Rubin at Duke University. And so he's one of the, big names with reminiscence bump research. And so I know he's had some publications on the cognitive hypothesis explanation. And that explanation goes something like this. You have a period of rapid changes in your life and maybe instability, followed by a period of stability.
Right.
And, for a lot of young adults, that's like you're in college and you graduate from college, you're starting your career, you're starting your family. It's like a lot of stuff is changing.
Right.
And then you have that settling down period. But so he and some colleagues said, well, okay, what if we look at some other groups of people who had that same experience, period of instability followed by a period of stability, but that happened at a different age.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so I can't remember what country, but they followed a group of immigrants. And the bump followed the timeline trajectory for those individuals.
Right, yeah.
So you see the bump, but it was actually later because the timing of that instability followed by stability happened later.
Yeah.
So that was fairly compelling evidence for that cognitive hypothesis.
Right. Yeah, and I talk about that immigrant study as well. I feel like they were from somewhere in Latin America, but I could be wrong about that.
I cannot remember.
And I say Latin America broadly because I don't even want to say Central or South because I don't even know. Yeah, so Alice is remembering these older. Alice is remembering these older memories and the ones as the disease progresses. It is those newer memories are getting eaten away, and she's losing lots and lots of in the moment things. So she first discovers this by forgetting words, forgetting where things momentarily are. And all sorts of things. An early scene is she gets lost on her run and she doesn't recognize that she's on the campus where she teaches at Columbia. And she forgets a word during a talk. Yeah, it really is. I mean, a lot of these scenes were super tough to watch, including the very last scene when she's essentially a shell. But of course, the movie is called Still Alice. So the idea here is that she is still this person called Alice to all of the people around her children, her in-laws, her husband. And, eventually she's going to have to get round-the-clock care. And you had mentioned in the notes that there's a particular scene that we'll go ahead and play here.
completed exterior repairs, and inside we replaced the elevators, refurbished the auditorium, the library and lounge area, and upgraded our HVAC system.
Well, that's good.
We also took away a lot of the old security doors. Residents are issued a bracelet instead, which keeps them from using elevators or leaving the building, depending on their level. I don't know if you've experienced this yet with your parent, but a lot of times they get nighttime restlessness and wandering. This way we can prevent their elopement without patients feeling they're locked in.
I see.
We saw after a while that large group activities left most of the residents unengaged and even distressed by the confusion they experienced from all the stimulation. So we redefined activities to include all interactions between staff and residents in the unit. Staff looks for opportunities to make meaningful connections with residents, starting with knowing about the person who they've been and what makes them comfortable. One woman who had worked as a nurse sat part of most days in the nursing station writing notes.
That's heartbreaking.
Yes, but it's a behavior we see time and again. We don't have any restrictions on visiting times. Family and friends are welcome any hour of day or night.
It doesn't look like anybody's here today.
Well, Sunday's the day they usually come by.
What's that?
That's a chair alarm. Certain residents have them so we know when they're up and about.
Is she all right?
It's just a precautionary measure.
Get me to Penn Station.
It's all women.
We do have mainly female residents here, but there are men. There's William over there. William was part of the team that sent the first satellite into Earth.
And so in that scene, she's visiting a nursing home and she's talking to one of the resident nurses, and she explains what's going on with those residents. So what do you think about that scene, Shana?
Yeah, I was really intrigued by this scene because the staff person is explaining to Alice, we used to have lots of big group, recreational activities, but we noticed that a lot of the residents are either disengaged or they're getting distressed.
Yeah.
Just really because of the confusion.
Yeah.
They're just not able to kind of engage and be present.
Yeah.
And so they had really kind of changed their models so that the staff get to spend more sort of one-on-one time with the patients, really get to know them, know their histories. And in that way, the staff are set up to be able to, okay, the staff person didn't say this, but what I heard was the staff are more prepared to have readily available cues to give the residents to ease this sort of disjointed experience.
Yeah.
The problem is there's a discrepancy between the landscape in the person's mind, which may be much more connected to the past,
Right.
and the reality that is around them. It's very disjointed. It's jarring for them.
Right.
So the more you can kind of help them out and give them cues to facilitate the retrieval
Mm-hmm.
of these memories that are, what they do have,
Right.
the more comfortable they are. And it's a quality of life issue at this point. There's not
Yeah.
anything, there's no intervention we can do at this point to improve cognitive performance.
Right.
It's about comfort.
Right.
Mhm.
Quality of life in the palliative sense, right?
Right.
Which
So
which leads which is sort of left unfinished at the end of the film. Because it
we
sort
don't
of
really know
abruptly ends.
Alice's trajectory.
Yeah, we sort of
Right.
get a sense of what is going to happen with conversations that are quote unquote overheard between her husband and her eldest daughter
Mhm.
about how he was going to be taking a job at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And what we don't really know what's going to happen to her and whether or not she's going to stay in New York in a home, the home that she visits. She visits under the pretense, by the way, of having a family member come and take up residence there, rather than saying that it's her with this very early onset neurodegenerative disease. So. It's rough all around, and we don't get that closure. Of course, that's not the point of the movie, but
Right.
it is what it is. So I wanna After a quick break, I want to jump into the accuracy of the conversations that she has with the neurologist. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with that discussion. Keep on listening. Hey, listener. Thanks for sticking around this episode. I hope you're enjoying it. Anyway, I need your help in growing this podcast's audience. In past episodes, I've asked you to share this podcast with 5 of your friends. Let's keep doing that. Share this podcast on social media, especially if you really liked an episode. Share that episode. Tell 5 of your friends or family if they have an interest in film or psychology, or even better, both. Growing the audience is our goal for the second year of programming, and so we need your help to get that done. Other ways to contribute to the podcast include tips to our PayPal, found on our website, becoming a patron at patreon.com/cinemapsychpod, rocking some sweet merch from our Spreadshirt shop, and or leaving us a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Now back to the show. Alrighty, so we were talking about Still Alice. I'm here with Dr. Shana Southard-Dobbs, and we were talking about the neurologist. There's a lot of scenes with this sort of random dude who is like the random guy in the back of a school assembly just giving you a thumbs up with a big smile. Like, yeah, this is great. Like, there's a lot of screen time given to this guy. And we don't know a lot about him other than he's a neurologist and he seems like he wants to give Alice an appropriate doctor-patient relationship. Which, I mean, is nice. You don't see that in
that's
films.
Good.
Right.
That's important.
Yeah. Right. As she's going to be going through something really, really terrible. But you had some thoughts on this, and I'd like to pick your brain about your thoughts on Alice's discussions over the course of the film with this neurologist.
Well, so there were like, how many visits were there? At least 4.
Yeah, something like that. Because there were two by herself, and there were at least 2 with her husband.
Yeah, that's right. So we spent like a lot of time in this neurologist's office.
And then he shows up at her Alzheimer's Association speech.
Yeah. That's right.
He's just like,
thumbs up.
They hand to him, and he's like, yeah. That was a good speech. I'm like, who cares, dude?
Awkward. that was I don't know.
Some of the writing choices, I will say, as well as, and this goes back to my earlier point about how none of these people were likable in the first 20 minutes of the film. And the film is only like 90 minutes long. So if you're a third of your movie, is, am I supposed to like these people? Do I care that she gets Alzheimer's disease?
Well, yeah. You know what? That didn't register for me. that scene at the end when he's like, "Good job" on her speech. But now that you bring that to my attention, because she's a professor, she talks in front of audiences. Well, she used to, like all the time, right? Every day, no big deal. Yeah, that was kind of like pat on the head. No thanks. Anyway,
so anyways,
yeah, okay.
These discussions with the neurologist.
Yeah.
So you have you have some thoughts.
Well, I don't think I told you this, Alex, but so in a previous professional life, I was a counselor.
Like a school counselor or like a clinical counselor.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like my master's degree is in counseling.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so straight out of undergrad, that was my first, sort of foray into graduate training. And so I recognized, some of the like assessment, the basic cognitive assessment.
Yeah. I'm surprised she
That's-
didn't say man, woman, TV, person,
Mhm.
refrigerator. I can never remember the last one.
Well, I was like, are we doing a mini mental status exam here? And there was some like glimmers of it, but it wasn't a full blown, mini mental status exam. I don't think.
Yeah, I think
Thought
they
we might see a clock drawing.
Yeah, they may have had to get like copyright clearance to use
probably
the
right,
actual
to
test.
use
Yeah.
all of that.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was at that point. I was kind of hoping we were going to see a clock drawing. But there was none of that.
I don't think that would have been too cinematic.
It wouldn't have been what?
Too cinematic.
Nah, probably not. I don't know.
You
Close
put it
up.
to
I
some
don't know.
dramatic music, maybe.
Right. Yeah. And that's pretty niche too, though, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I really struggled with this whole PET scan situation.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because at one of the visits, so John is her spouse.
Yeah,
is
Alec Baldwin.
here for this consultation.
Right.
Yeah, played by Alec Baldwin. And so they're in the neurologist's office. He points to his computer and boom, there's a, bright, colorful picture of a brain. And I'm like, that's got to be a PET scan. Okay. And he points at these red spots and says, yep, that's where you got the beta amyloid. I'm so sorry. It's been there for a long time.
I don't think somebody knows what positrons are doing.
Well, okay, so I'm going to be real honest with you. I'm not a neuroscientist.
Fair.
I mean, I've learned enough about PET scans to teach some basics to undergraduate students. So I did do a little bit of reading, and at first I was like, no, okay, bright spots in a PET scan. That's where you have high activity, right?
Mhm.
High glucose consumption,
Mhm.
blood flow. So that doesn't seem right. It would be the places that would have lower activity. But then I did realize there are radioactive tracers that are used to detect the presence of
Oh, okay. So
beta amyloid.
Yeah. So this is not the same thing. So this kind of PET scan would still be using radioactive isotopes, but they're not showing you glucose activity, because the PET scans that are used in PET scans for functional scans. So the alternative, we'll say, to fMRI. Those radioactive isotopes are for lack of a better word, I'm going to say attracted to glucose, show glucose activity, and that's supposed to be the proxy, sort of like the bold signal is for magnetic resonance imaging. That's supposed to show you activity, but this must be a different radioactive isotope that is attracted to beta amyloid, which is one of the issues with Alzheimer's. Yeah. Now, I think, to be honest with you, and I get nitpicky about this stuff too. I think, to be honest with you, they were trying. I don't know how much is fully accurate on that. We'd have to talk to a neuroscientist, of course. But I think what they may have been trying to do was, here's some sciencey stuff. Here's some jargony stuff. We're going to Star Trek this with some techno and psychobabble. And people are going to get an indication if they have no idea what Alzheimer's is. The hand waviness over it. You've got red spots on your brain.
Bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it felt like to me. And I was like, oh, I get really frustrated with that. I'm going to be very honest with you. When I'm an audience member for film or TV, I'm like, you could have just tried 20% harder and been right.
That's very true. We'd have to look at the credits to see if they consulted with actual neuroscientists or Alzheimer's researchers. They got permission to use the Alzheimer's Association stuff. So
Yeah, they did have their logos and
mhm.
their branding and all
Yeah,
that.
so they
Okay.
definitely got
Yeah.
permission from
Mhm.
that association to do it. You had a note. I think I do want you to talk about this if you can. So you said you get annoyed by this. What's your side note on this? To sort of
Okay.
put it in perspective for some people who haven't seen Still Alice or haven't seen a PET scan being hand wavy.
Yeah, so the Umbrella Academy
Mm-hmm.
on Netflix, which is super cool. Great. Oh. Okay.
Didn't grab
It's pretty cool.
me. Maybe.
Oh man, it's kind of cool. I don't know. We are not agreeing on the level of coolness of the Umbrella Academy. Okay, whatever. It's kind of okay to watch. That's fine.
Yeah.
But one of the main characters, Vanya,
Mhm.
played by Elliot Page,
Mhm.
is a professional violinist.
Mhm.
And I am an amateur musician.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm not a professional musician, and I'm married to a music theorist. So music has been it's a big part of my life.
Yeah. You
And-
know when it's not being used properly.
Oh my gosh, it was so cringy watching the professional violin player who looks like they've never held a violin ever. And I feel kind of bad about this now because actually in preparation for this conversation did a little bit of reading, and Elliot Page did take a couple of violin lessons.
Yeah,
But,
I don't know
okay.
if we should give him that. Like listen, actors who are listening to this amazing podcast, any
Right. I know they
professional
are.
actors that are listening
I
to
know they
this,
are.
listen, if you're going to go get some training on something that you don't know how to do, this is what you start with. You start with, yo, I'm going to be playing this character in this movie or TV show, and I need this to look believable. I don't need to learn how to play it. I don't need to know what I'm playing. I don't even need to understand what I'm playing. It needs to look believable. So if I am impersonating Keith Richards, how does Keith Richards hold his guitar? Right? Do you think Rami Malek was just like, no, I got Freddie Mercury down. It's fine.
I was about to say
I know how
that.
to sing. It's fine.
I
No,
was about to
he
say Rami
literally
Malek.
watched Freddie Mercury over and over and over again to look believable.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm off my soapbox now.
Okay. I like Elliot Page. They're cool.
Yeah.
I love all the films and stuff, but whew,
Yeah.
that was hard.
Yeah, and I think circling back to the to all of the neurology things,
Yeah.
they picked and chose the things that the audience, without any knowledge like us, like they're not writing for us, right? They're not directing for us, but they chose the things that would have impact to people. So we're gonna do this hand wavy PET scan thing. I don't know if PET scan is the most accurate test for Alzheimer's. But in any case, they were like, let's just do it. I mean, the movie came out in 2015. They had to have known
Fair point.
what was, but I mean, fair point, but they had to have known. That was only 6 years ago.
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
not that long.
not that long ago, and not so long ago that we have no idea what we're talking about with respect to Alzheimer's disease, right?
Right. So the PET scan stuff, like actually, I felt like I need to go read a bit to make sure that I'm thinking about this correctly. So it was at least, maybe sort of kind of plausible. But the doctor, so Alice is a really good example of a patient advocating for oneself.
Yeah.
So I loved actually that at the end of her very first consultation with the neurologist, he's like, okay, we're going to send you to get some tests. Want to rule some stuff out. Okay, great. And then she asks, in the meantime, what should I be doing? And that is an excellent question for a patient, really in any situation to ask. So that was really good. I appreciated seeing that.
Right.
2 things. Exercise, because it's good to get the blood pumping. Like, yeah, okay. And drink water, because hydration is good for the memory. What?
Yeah, that was
a weird thing to say.
Yeah, so I like so the exercise. As far as I'm aware, the research does suggest that exercise is good and has indirect and direct benefits on cognitive function. That's fine.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Water is essential to life, and you could literally say that about any malady that anybody has. Go home and drink some water. That's fine. You'll be fine.
Water is good for
Water is good for memory. At least it's not Frozen 2 and Olaf saying water has memory, and then at the end of the film, because Elsa does her magic with the remaining ice particles and makes them into actual memories, and he's like, I was right. And it's like, oh my God, no, you're teaching kids this. Kids are gonna be like, water has memory. And my daughter,
it was pretty cool though.
I mean, yeah, cool in a fairy tale sense, but like, how many kids think this is real? Water has memory. No, it doesn't. And so water.
I only just saw Frozen 2. Actually.
Well, there you go. So it's fresh in your mind. You were probably like horrified.
Right.
No, Olaf, don't go toward the dark side. This is pseudoscience.
Right.
Yeah. So hydration is good for everything.
Yeah. Right. It was a weird thing to say. Like,
you would think
again,
the doctor would be like, okay, yeah, so exercise, and she does go on runs, so that's good. And you would think that the doctor would be like, oh, okay, and then like, leave yourself notes or have a planner or do crossword puzzles. Something more than just drink water. You'll be fine if you drink water. No. You won't. This disease won't progress if you drink your 8 ounces of, or 8 glasses of water a day.
Right.
Your 64 ounces of water a day.
Gosh, that was annoying. That was a whiff right there.
Yeah. Hey, where'd you get your medical degree? That's good stuff.
Oh dear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now on to some lighter subjects with a very heavy film. How close to home did it hit when Alice is talking with the chair of her department about her student evaluations?
Oh man, right. I was like, this could be so instructive. Just this scene right here.
Oh my God.
Just
that clip for what not to do to a single person ever.
I'd been looking forward to this course my sophomore year, but I was thoroughly disappointed. The content was often muddled and delivered with little focus or care. Class was a waste of time. I ended up just following the online version. I found Linguistics 201 very erratic. I had a hard time following Dr. Howland's lectures. Even she seems like she gets lost in them.
Eric, I am so sorry. I didn't know the students felt this way. Obviously, I will make adjustments, and we can reevaluate my performance next semester.
Listen, is everything okay at home? Everything all right between you and John?
Yes, everything's fine with John.
Is it something we can help with? Stress, depression?
No. It's no.
Substance abuse,
Oh
alcohol?
no, God, Eric, no, it's nothing like that. It's medical. It's a medical issue, and I admit I had a hard time teaching last semester, and I wasn't aware of how much it showed.
Alice, I'm not following.
I have mild cognitive impairment.
Would you unpack that for me?
In February, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease.
What? Alice, oh my God, I'm sorry.
It's early. It's still early stages. I mean, obviously, it will limit my ability as time goes on. But for now, I feel perfectly
Alice,
capable.
really, there's no need to. I mean, we don't want you under any undue stress. That would be counterproductive.
I can handle the stress. I would like to remain in the department for as long as we all think is possible.
Well, I'll have to let the department and the faculty know.
Yes, of course.
I am so sorry.
Yeah, there was a lot in that scene.
We should, you and I should bring it up next time anybody has a discussion. Because I saw that and I was like, that's next time somebody brings up student evaluations and be like, hey, let me show you something that I watched recently that nobody should ever do.
Yeah, that was uncomfortable. The end of that conversation, like I really hated for her that, I don't think this is what you meant when you brought this up, but I really hated for her that she was really forced to disclose her diagnosis at this point.
Yeah.
And she did not get to do that in her own way.
Right.
And in her own time.
Right. Another aspect of Alzheimer's taking away a person's self. Yeah, because people are looking at you like, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? Why are you behaving or acting in this way? And it's like, oh my God. Because there's a really interesting scene that I'm going to play here that I think it is a nice juxtaposition for what you're saying there in the fact that she doesn't get to be herself and she doesn't get to do things her way anymore. And I think that's what they were trying to set up at the beginning of the film. And maybe that's part of, it's not why I thought she was unlikable. It's the conversations she was having with her daughter that was what I thought was unlikable. But the scene here is she goes out for a run. And she comes back, and Alec Baldwin is very upset that she flaked out on their dinner plans or whatever. So I'm gonna play that here.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I have Alzheimer's.
I texted you. I emailed you. There are ways to manage this
I
issue.
said I was sorry.
She's the chair of my department, for crying out loud. I had absolutely no idea where you were if something happened to you. Why didn't you bring your phone?
I told you I can't when I'm running.
Why don't you wear a fanny pack? Is it really that inhibiting?
Yes. I hate that this is happening to me.
I hate it too. But we have to keep the important things in our life going. We have to try, or we're going to go crazy.
I know, John. I am sorry, but I don't know what I would have been like at a dinner party. I might not be able to remember names or answer simple questions. I mean, never mind get through an anecdote.
I think you're doing great recently.
Relative to what? I wish I had cancer.
Don't say that.
No, I do. I mean it. I mean, I wouldn't feel so ashamed. When people have cancer, they wear pink ribbons for you and go on long walks and raise money, and you don't have to feel like some kind of a social...
So the thing that I want to juxtapose with what you said about having to basically being forced to disclose her diagnosis with her colleague, right? Somebody who was either elected or appointed to be the chair of the department because of some seniority or whatever, but still her colleague, right? We're both faculty members. These are our colleagues, and none of them at any point technically have that much power over us, right? It's with our deans and our provosts and things like that. Those are the people that I would consider my boss. So she says to her husband after she comes home, and she's like, I'm sorry, I forgot. And then she goes into how being at a dinner party with people that she doesn't know and having to navigate forgetting people's names. You see that at Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner in the film with her son's girlfriend. And so it's just, it means that she has to now think about mundane stuff more fully, right? She has to go delve deep inside into just normal things that people just do randomly every day. And she's got to be like, how do I navigate this? And now she has to deal with her colleague going like, what's wrong with you? Why are your student evaluations terrible? We have to fire you. It's like, what? But first of all, what? She probably tenured.
Wait a minute.
And then she's forced to go into that whole spiel, and then he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, but then we hear nothing else about it.
Right. That's so interesting because I didn't think about it this way, but I am pre-tenure. I'm an assistant professor. You are
same
too,
yeah
right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah I'm going up next year. Tenure and promotion review. So that's exciting. So that's interesting because as a pre-tenure faculty member, like I don't think it registered. I mean, it did register, but I was like that didn't feel super not normal to me that someone would talk with me about my course evaluations, because that does happen regularly.
Really?
Yeah, we actually have annual review, performance evaluation.
Right. And don't get me wrong. Yeah. I've had conversations with my chair and my provost about but not about specific comments. Right. It's in the aggregate. It's like, this is the general thrust and theme of your narrative comments.
That's true. No one has ever picked out individual comments and been like, what's going on here?
Yeah. So that's what was striking to me about it.
Right. But she's a presumably tenured
it seems,
faculty member, 50, and there's not that kind of scrutiny.
Right.
I mean, my understanding.
One can hope, right?
I look forward to the time.
Right. I look forward to the time that nobody cares about what I'm doing.
Do whatever I want.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was just, gosh. But I have thought at times about how to have conversations with students about their course evaluations. And I honestly have not landed on like kind of the right spot for that yet. Yeah.
I mean, and that's fine too. I think you could. I think we should all have conversations about what they are for, what they mean, what they do. It's surprising that a lot of focus is made on Alice being a professor of linguistics and her husband being some sort of professor or medical doctor or something of genetics, or I don't know what he does. He just says a bunch of random sciencey words throughout the movie. But they're both academic. They're both academic.
Yes.
And it seems strange to me that they didn't really fully explore the consequences of showing a scene like that, which was odd. I mean, I think what they wanted to do was make her more vulnerable than she had been previously.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, right. And lawsuit right there. That's a potential for big problems. Big problems. And I want to bring up one last thing, which was the filmmaking aspect, because we both picked up on some interesting cinematography and framing for understanding what Alice was going through. And not a lot of... So the one film that I would compare Still Alice to in my mind is The Notebook.
I've not seen it. Can you believe it?
That's fine. You're not losing anything but a love story, and how many of those are there?
Okay. I'm gonna make another one.
So it's a pretty cut and dry movie. It's the main character is, and I can't remember who plays her, but she has Alzheimer's and she lives in a home, and her husband is James Garner, I believe, and their younger selves are played by Rachel McAdams and but what's his face?
Oh, Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's very, cinematography wise, filmmaking wise, it's very cut and dry movie. There's not a lot of messing around with the perception of that. But what I think still Alice does really well here is use the camera and what it's recording to sort of get you in the perception of Alice herself. So the lack of focus versus when it becomes a focus, when she is, they use a lot of twirling shots, like the around shots. So like I mentioned earlier that she was running and she doesn't recognize where she is in Colombia, and she sort of, she's looking around, but so the camera is also moving around her in a circular way. Later in the film, when she's looking at the book, but then she's like, I need to go to the bathroom. Probably the most tragic scene in the movie is she can't find the bathroom in this house that she's probably known for a really long time, and she ends up wetting herself. How the camera just, like, our focus is as confused as she is, even though we can see which room is the bathroom. We're still as confused as her, and all of those things. What other things caught your attention in that realm?
I thought the filmmakers did a nice job with this. I didn't make a note about the spinning, the kind of the spinning spin the camera around to sort of reflect her disorientation. But now that you say that, yes, I totally. I remember that, and it stands out to me now. The change of focus as we see Alice kind of losing and then regaining focus, and really the whole film. It doesn't have a smooth narrative arc. It's a series of scenes. Yeah. And there are abrupt transitions between the scenes. Yeah. And I think, tell me if you agree with this, the way I remember it is that the scenes kind of get shorter. The transitions are a little more disorienting between scenes as we progress. Yeah. And sort of.
And in that context, while we were watching it, we noticed very early on that there is no indication. I shouldn't say no indication. There's very little indication about how much time has progressed. Right. So Anna is pregnant, so we at least know that 9 months occurs because we are told when she's pregnant, and then they have the twins, and she wants to hold the baby, and they're hesitant. Like, she's like, I know how to hold a baby.
Right? Yes, she said that. I know how to hold a baby.
Yeah. Which is interesting from a memory perspective. Now, we're not going to spend a whole segment on this one, but procedural memories aren't necessarily lost.
Yeah, right. And the holding of the baby is from, sort of maybe that privileged time.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, you're right.
So we don't get a sense of how much time has progressed from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. And since you said that the scenes get shorter and the cuts get more disjointed and sharper, that makes a lot of sense. I'm putting that into context.
I hadn't thought very much about that sense of the passage of time, but now that you say that, yeah, it didn't seem like it must have been very much time. Yeah, and I think I was like interpolating that from the knowledge of how rapid the decline is,
From
in her
the
cognitive
neurologist's appointment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah. Ooh, that's a good observation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so to end our discussion, I am going to put you on the spot. What is your favorite scene from the film? Tough one.
Well, I feel like this might be cheating a little bit, but I was most moved, I think, by the closing scene.
Mm-hmm.
Her speech at the Alzheimer's Association Care Conference. And it was honestly the only. This may tie into your statement about not feeling a real affinity for these people, but that was the first time that I even came close to crying somehow, and I did here because I think there was it really tapped into. My spouse and I are both academics, we're both professors, and we have conversations sometimes about what if one of us develops Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah.
How will we even, cope with that? And so much of our identity is in our cognitive, performance. A lot of my identity is wrapped up in the way my mind works. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think it really tapped into that for me.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of more aspects about that scene. So her being very strategic about, I am going to do this thing. I am still Alice, right? I'm going to give a talk in front of an audience, and it's not the way I used to do it.
Right.
I have to work much harder at it.
Right.
I have my highlighter, to make sure that I can follow along. That I really enjoyed that aspect of that. And then these kind of beautiful words. All my life, I've accumulated memories. They've become my most treasured possessions. And that's a little bit the way I talk with my memory students. We have just today, this afternoon, this week, we have reached the portion of the semester that is autobiographical memory. We did some memory basics, and then we read Make It Stick and talked about effective learning strategies. Nice. And now it's time to talk about you,
right?
And your memories and how they make you who you are. And it's very personal.
Yeah.
And I liked that the film ended on that note.
Yeah, that's true. That was the tour de force moment of the movie. Yeah. The scene that really tugged me and actually sort of made me feel as anxious as she did was the having to go to the bathroom and then ultimately peeing herself, right? Because as an adult, we know where things are. We don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. We know we've been if I'm in my house, I know where the bathrooms are, and to lose something so basic and reverting to toddlerhood, to infancy in that moment, tugged at me. You mentioned crying. I thought this was going to be a big tearjerker. It wasn't.
And I cry very easily. I'm a super, if somebody else in my vicinity is even sort of looking like they're about to cry, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna cry.
And I'm for particular films, I am right there with you. And like I said, I thought this was going to be a tougher movie, but I think my biggest issue with it was those early character scenes where it's just like, am I supposed to care about these people? Because you're making it very difficult. And Julianne Moore is phenomenal in this movie as a whole, but I think that that fantastical aspect of her performance is the, I don't know, back 2/3 of the film and not the first part, because she is sort of, if she was my mother, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go kind of moment. And so you like, and you find yourself, oh, wow, I agree with Kristen Stewart in this moment. Oh, what has happened?
What's happening right now? Julianne Moore won an Academy Award.
She did.
For
Yeah,
this
that's
performance.
what I thought. That's what I thought. I hadn't looked it up yet, but that's what I thought.
I did to double check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, rightly so. People must have been stuck with the latter portion of the film. That is, I'm not a voter for the Academy. I'm not a member of the Academy, so my vote doesn't count. But
one day, maybe.
Okay. I don't think so.
Probably not.
Well, I would like to thank Shana for coming on today and joining me to discuss Still Alice. While saying goodbye, is there anything that you would like our listeners to know? Anything you'd like to plug? Where can folks find out more about your work?
Yeah. So fun fact about me, until shockingly recently, I was one of those people who would gleefully whip out my flip phone and like flip it at you to show it to you. Like I really only I have my first smartphone that I got right before the pandemic started. So that was good timing.
Good timing.
So, and I actually don't have a Twitter account, though I know that's the place to be. Like academic Twitter is,
it's not for everyone, but yeah, sure.
I know about it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But I'm not there.
Yeah.
So you won't find me on academic Twitter. But I do have a profile on ResearchGate, and so you can see some
I will
information about my
everyone.
publications.
Yeah, I will link everyone to that.
Great, thank you.
ResearchGate.
And the Society for the Teaching of Psychology has a really active Facebook group,
right?
And that's where we met,
right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So you can see me there.
Indeed.
For fellow teachers of psychology.
Indeed, yeah. That Facebook group has gotten a lot of love on the show, and it will continue to get a lot of love on the show because of how active and amazing it is.
It's a great community.
Yeah, it is, for sure. And welcome to the third decade of the 21st century, Shana.
Thanks.
You have finally arrived with the rest of us. That's all right. Yeah, so I will link everyone to your ResearchGate, and yeah, thanks for joining. And that's going to do it for this episode. Until the next one. Thanks for listening.